I hate my boyfriend's idea of the perfect wedding. Myself and my boyfriend, both 28, have been together 6 years. 3 years into the relationship my boyfriend started hinting he wanted to propose, and I said I didn't see it as a priority since we didn't have massive savings and I didn't see the point in spending a lot of money for a wedding. After that conversation he started talking about his guest list, his perfect wedding and the music that he would pick it once we saved up enough. His idea of a perfect wedding is a giant rave party with all his friends, 10+ groomsmen and 100+ people on his side only, alternative music and friends and family getting super drunk and stoned. His whole family is into weed. I am not, and my family would be super uncomfortable if people were smoking heavily at our wedding. I said that didn't sound like a wedding I would want to attend, and definitely not a wedding I'd want to be the bride at. I also said my family and friends would be super uncomfortable and that I would rather save to buy a house. After this conversation he started telling everyone that we could not get married because my family was full of snobs who didn't want to mix with his lower-class family, his words, and that they didn't approve of him. This is not true, so I privately tried to explain to him that my family likes him and that I am the one who doesn't like his ideas for the wedding and that it wasn't my family's fault. He told me that it's elitist to want to have a boring wedding and that my snob family needs to be accepting of his family's culture. We are both white, but his parents were quite poor and his extended family has quite a few people in prison as well as people with questionable occupations. My family is middle class. I like spending time with his family and they are lovely people, but they are very different from my family. I got really angry and said I love being with him, but since we are already fighting about a wedding without being engaged I am not going to marry him, and that his idea of a perfect wedding sounds like my worst nightmare. He got upset about it but then seemed to accept it. He hasn't mentioned getting married in quite a few months, but yesterday someone got married in a movie and I made a comment about the groom's suit and he said, "Well, you don't have to worry about that since getting married to me is your worst nightmare." Was I too harsh? I think your boyfriend just wants to throw a rave. Does he know he can do that without getting married? Yeesh. I love a good party, but I would be mortified if any of that happened at my wedding. In front of my grandparents. Who I'm pretty sure don't even know I drink wine with dinner sometimes. Lol. You sure you're not dating a high schooler? No, and he has his hands full of red flags. His response to your perspective was massively immature and destructive. You need to have a good hard think about why you're in this relationship. Some folks are a lot of fun and very lovable, but they aren't necessarily husband and father type material. This isn't about class, money, snobbery. This is about being able to demonstrate basic relationship skills like conflict resolution and empathy for others. Not too harsh at all. I refrain from stating my opinion of his idea of a wedding since it's a personal choice of his. And that's okay. What is not okay was his reaction to your disagreement. It's childish and immature. It's basically a temper tantrum for not fully 100% agreeing. So the real question now is, with no real wedding in sight, based on what you stated, do you really have realistic expectation for the relationship to last? What he described as a frat party, not a wedding. WTF? Getting high is not culture. He basically wants to have a rave disguised as a wedding. His family has nothing to do with this. He has a lot of growing up to still do if he thinks his way is the only and right way to get married. Okay, so I grew up in the 90s rave scene and have had friends who married who met in that scene. They didn't do rave weddings, but many had normal weddings, with a normal reception until like 10 p.m. or so, when they had DJs start playing electronic music. It was a great way to have the traditional wedding but still have that component. That way the more conservative folks could enjoy the wedding and reception, and head home before things started getting crazy. If you really want to be with your boyfriend, personally I wouldn't when he started trash-talking my family, but you do you. Then maybe you need to come up with that sort of compromise. He's being entirely selfish and not considering that this isn't just a party for him. You're also a part of this hypothetical wedding, you should enjoy it. If he's not willing to understand that and compromise, he's not mature enough to be in a serious relationship. So, you tried to have an adult discussion with your boyfriend. He told you what he wanted, and when he wasn't going to get what he wanted he threw a tantrum. He sounds like the elitist snob, haha. Your boyfriend sounds like Jason from The Good Place, and not in a good way. You may want to rethink your relationship. Your boyfriend's priorities are out of whack. He wants a wedding, not a marriage, and one that only makes him happy at that. He sounds like a handful anyway, and I'd be surprised if this behavior happened in a silo. Is it always his way or the highway, and getting angry if it's not? Him twisting your words to vilify you and your family is reason enough to reconsider. Being trashy isn't a culture, it's just trashy. He's being a huge baby and refusing to consider that it's not just his wedding. If he can't understand that, do you really want to marry him? What happens when only his parenting opinions matter? What happens when only how he wants to split chores, on where he wants to live, or what kind of house you buy matters? This is a sign of a huge problem in my opinion. So he holds his teenaged rave party as his bachelor party or birthday party? It's a wedding, so you plan it together. But you need to sort out your communication issues out first. Try couple counseling if you want to stick around. I would have issues with the shit talking my family. So his reaction is to start talking shit about you to everyone, not to find a compromise? Doesn't sound like someone you should marry. I don't think you were harsh. The wedding is not just his but also yours, so you're allowed to have an opinion and a preference. It seems he is just trying to make you feel bad until you inevitably give in and have the wedding he wants instead of compromising. It is also important to understand how he is portraying your side or the family, as he is making you seem like the villain. What the hell did I just read? I'll break it down for you. This guy is an absolute loser. That, or he is truly delusional. No, you weren't. All I'm hearing is he didn't get his way, so his first reaction was to throw a fit and try to manipulate you through shaming you so you would do what he wants. He's still trying to manipulate you. His comment about the groom suit is meant to make you apologize and give in. You didn't say marrying him sounds like a nightmare. You said his ideas for a wedding did. Honestly, I agree with you, that sounds like a nightmare. Take a step back and really think over other issues you've had. See if you can track a history of manipulative behavior like this. Why are you with someone who thinks you and your family are elitist snobs? Does he want to marry you because you are you? Or does he want to marry you because he wants a partner in his life? This is an easy one. Don't get married to this guy and do not get knocked up. Listen, my girlfriend and I both fucking love weed, but smoking with my extended and family and my future in-laws at some weird rave wedding does not sound remotely fun. You're not being a snob, you're drawing a completely normal line in the sand. Was in a similar situation with an ex-partner. He was a lower-class stoner and his family were all into that. My family are middle class and definitely not. Started off with just the occasional quip that I was no fun, and ended in him sexually assaulting, gaslighting, and emotionally abusing me. Try to think of any moments in your relationship when you feel he might have treated you poorly. The "at least you don't need to worry about marrying me since it's your worst nightmare" comment might be a good place to start. Get out whilst you still can. His family's culture is getting piss-ass drunk and getting high, rolling on the floor laughing. You can be from a lower class and still think a giant rave wedding party is not a good idea. Lol. It has nothing to do with elitism. I think his responses are very petty and immature. It also seems like both your ideas of a good time do not align. If he already has such a huge chip on his shoulder about this false elitism narrative in his head, honestly, it's just better to not tie yourself to him forever. Do yourself a favor and do not get engaged to this guy. If he wanted a rave, he can just go to one. WTF kind of clown tries to make his own wedding one? I think it was harsh, but his idea of a wedding sounds like a frat party tears of joy. No, what are you doing with someone like that? Your boyfriend is 28 and is, still, I guess, into raves. And #X200B. I guess we all mature at different rates, am I right? Please don't marry this man. Save money for a house, where you live alone. Your values don't line up at all. There is no way you could count on him to be responsible as a husband or a father. Girl, just run away from him as fast as you can. After this conversation, he started telling everyone that we could not get married because my family was full of snobs who didn't want to mix with his lower-class family, his words, and that they didn't approve of him. Why didn't you break up after that? His extended family has quite a few people in prison as well as people with questionable occupations. My family is middle class. I like spending time with his family and they are lovely people, but they are very different from my family. Definitely don't marry into that family. Emo, marriages work best when people are from the same socio-economic ballpark. His response of spreading lies about you is a huge yikes. That is a problem to have 1, 2, or 200 conversations about. But it cannot go unchecked. I have to put in my 2 cents here. Your boyfriend is being a brat. You did not say being married to him was your worst nightmare. You were not being too hard, he wasn't listening. Tell him to grow up. If he wants to marry you, any wedding you have should be to both your likings. This is like a marriage test, to see if you guys can work this out. I have to add, if he can't come up with a compromise, you should move on. So your options are, have this wedding exactly the way he wants it, or don't get married and he slanders you and your family. Sounds like an ultimatum to me. That sound like the most tacky PNW shit I've ever heard. Face vomiting. Haha, hell no, you were not too harsh. He sounds like he has the mentality of an 18-year-old. Everyone seems to talking about compromise. What about the fact that OP's boyfriend began spewing lies about OP's fam not liking him to their friends? He sounds like a jerk. No offense, but he is very childish. Girl, you need to leave. Don't ever marry him. A wedding is for two people, not one. Find a middle ground or don't get married. Skeptical smiley face. Sounds like his family would cause a lifetime of issues. Not because they are poor but due to poor life decisions. Cousin Timmy is arrested again, can you help with bail? Uncle Eric had his house raided by SWAT again, can we watch his kids? Dad has another DUI. We need to drive him everywhere. He sounds trashy and the way he's talked crap about your family is unacceptable. It's also childly and petty to talk crap about you and your family to other people. I would immediately break up if somebody did that to me. It sounds to me like he's not ready to get married if he is still into partying. I think you are right not to get married. I think you should see this as a relationship for now, not long term. Your boyfriend obviously has a major chip on his shoulder. You definitely were not too harsh. If my husband made a passive-aggressive comment like he did, I'd have just laughed and responded in kind. Yeah. You're right, ha 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 ha. It sounds like you tried to be a bit more diplomatic and he turned it on you and attacked you with it. He kind of pushed you into being very blunt. The thing is, you made it clear that the way each of you wants to conduct your life isn't really compatible. It sounds like you've basically told him your relationship isn't long-term, which may really be a good idea here. Edit to add. Please don't buy a house with this guy. Why are you still dating someone that publicly shame your family and lie to people about them? Also, he sounds highly immature. I understand you dated him for 6 years and you might feel that you have to stay because of that, but he's not a good partner.